So I have had ME-CFS now for over 7 years, and in the last 2.5 years I have started to engage in advocacy work in relation to the condition. Now that has involved this YouTube channel. It's also involved writing guest articles for Health Rising and giving talks, particularly to the Irish ME Trust, and of course writing the 2 books that I've done. In this video I want to talk about why I do this work. I want to talk about my motivations, I want to talk about my aims and hopes for it. I want to talk about how this work gives me meaning, and I also want to talk about how I see my role in doing this, what I want to achieve with my work in general, and also how I want to see it grow over the coming years. This video is something that obviously it's much more personal than my other videos, and I hope it will be nevertheless interesting for people to learn more about where I'm coming from. But also, if you are someone who engages in advocacy work in relation to ME-CFS, I hope that there are things in this that you can relate to, or that may also be a helpful perspective. So anyway, that's what I am going to talk about today. And the first area that I want to touch on is finding meaning. So the first thing to say on that, when you have ME-CFS, and I've had it pretty bad, I've got better over the last few years, which has also been something that has allowed me to do this kind of work. As it goes on and on, it can be hard to find meaning because the suffering can be quite, pretty bad, and it can be hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And in my first, certainly 3 years of being sick, I was really lost. I was in the dark as to what my illness involved. I had vague ideas and so on, but it wasn't I was just in this nightmare of awful symptoms and also not knowing what on earth was really kind of causing them. And bit by bit, I was reading the research. I don't have a medical or scientific background, and therefore it's all really hard to get your head around this stuff initially. But bit by bit, I was kind of piecing things together from reading the research. And eventually, particularly when I came to understand the work of Wirth and Scheibenbogen, who put out a unifying model of ME-CFS, I started to feel that I actually understood much better what I was facing. And then the other element was that bit by bit, I managed to find strategies that helped me to improve my quality of life and to improve my health. And so with these 2 elements together, a desire was born in me to actually turn around what I had, put it out there, both so that other people could benefit from my own journey, but also for my own sake to be able to reflect on, kind of draw a line in the sand for the things that I've gone through up until now. And so both for my own sake and for the sake of other ME-CFS patients, I wanted to actually put these learnings out there. And so now, now I'm more functional, but my life is still, hard. When I wake up in the morning, I'm excited to think, what am I going to do today to actually share what I've learned, put something out there that may be of use for other patients. And that ties in with the fact that, I've always loved learning and I've always loved teaching. And so right now, I'm really doing that with the topic that interests me the most in the world. Now don't get me wrong, if I could wave a magic wand and not have ME-CFS, I'd probably be doing something different. I love composing music, but at the moment I do have ME-CFS. This is my world, this is my reality, and I'm trying to make the best of it. The second way in which this work gives me meaning, what you might call the great fight of ME-CFS. And that is that we have a situation where many millions of patients around the world are ill, some of them extremely ill. There is not much help. And this is an injustice. It's something that, has to change. I think that, so many of us are engaged in that fight, sometimes just by getting through another day. But I want to play my role in that. And I know my limitations. If I can play my part in trying to turn that situation around, as so many other, tens of thousands or more patients and researchers are trying to do, then I want to do that. So in that way also, my work gives my life meaning. In particular, as people who follow this channel will know, and yes, I report on many different strands of the research and talk about many different treatments. I particularly value and believe in the strand of research by Wirth and Scheibenbogen, and I want to particularly communicate that I want to particularly talk about and raise awareness of the potential of Wirth's Mitoticure pill. And sometimes people say, Patrick, why are you talking about Mitoticure a lot? And it's ultimately out of a belief, and whether I'm right or wrong, I don't know, but it's out of a belief that there are so many obstacles to funding something like Mitoticure, a specific ME-CFS pill. I mean, historically, there have been so many barriers created around moving the research and treatments into this illness forward. To this date, there is no approved ME-CFS treatment. That I think that actually trying to create some noise about Mitoticure may be important in order to attract the necessary investment to find out whether or not it actually works. So that's also something that's an important part of the way I find meaning in the work that I do. And it's not for my own sake. I mean, if Mitoticure got all of its funding tomorrow, it'd still be like 7 years until it's available, or something like that. And I want to be well long before then. But I do think it is so important that ME-CFS has an approved medication. Like a lot of ME-CFS patients that we come across online, they go down rabbit holes of research, they're really trying to improve their lot. In general terms, like a lot of people can't do that for whatever reason. And we need to have a world in which people get a diagnosis of ME-CFS and there is actually a pill that can improve their situation. There are people in townships who get ME-CFS. They're not like, they probably don't even know that they have it, because that's the way that the medical system is. We need to have a situation where people can be diagnosed and have a treatment that actually diminishes their suffering. So that's also something that gives meaning to my work. And then fourthly and finally, on the topic of meaning, and much more personally, relates to my mum, who passed away just over 10 years ago after 6 years with breast cancer. Her example over those 6 years was extremely powerful, and she wrote a book called The Pink Ribbon Path, which encapsulated how she went about those years, and it was a really powerful transformation for me as her son to witness. And I later worked on a second edition of her book called Following the Pink Ribbon Path, which was published in 2018. That example of courage in the face of life's challenges and of still seeking to make the very best of it is something that has stuck with me. And I follow that example very imperfectly. When I'm feeling down, it comes to me and I try to keep going. And I also think that before my mum's journey with breast cancer, she was always thinking about, she thought a lot in her life and acted a lot in her life who were suffering and needed help. And she founded 2 national charities in Ireland, the Wheel and also the Irish Hospice Foundation. And these both left their lasting mark, and they're still going strong today. So when I look at her example, both the work she did charitably but also personally, that gives me a lot of strength now. I sometimes think that ultimately I couldn't necessarily do what I'm actually doing without that example, because it was like imprinted in me. And so I get a lot of the kind of perseverance that I have from her example. So that's how I kind of find meaning in the work that I'm doing. And I want to kind of talk also in longer videos some other time about some of those topics. Now I want to talk about how I see my role in this work and how I want it to grow and evolve. So I basically have come to see myself as a patient advocate journalist. I'm basically trying to report on the research in ways that I hope are accessible for people who just may not be in a position to follow the research for whatever reason. I want to report on treatment research. I want to also talk about my own ongoing experiments in trying to improve my quality of life. And as part of that, something that's very important to me is that I want all of my most important work, I want to report on it here, and I don't want to hold anything back. And when you look at the landscape on YouTube in relation to ME-CFS and long COVID, yes, there are people who are engaged similarly to me, and I would say they have similar motivations. Like Gez Medinger, for example. His channel is wonderful, and he's done an amazing work for patients with these kinds of illnesses. Or it's not a channel, but it's an amazing resource, is Court Johnson's Health Rising blog. That has helped so many patients, and it's helped me a lot as well. And so, but on the other hand, there's also quite a lot of channels where you get the impression that the purpose of most of the videos is actually a form of marketing. It is an attempt to, essentially each video is a pitch, and information is always being held back. And so the actual topics discussed will be quite limited, and the idea is that you need to go and buy their program, which will give you the full picture and which will be necessary for you to recover. Everyone has to make a living, and I think some of the people behind these programs, I think, have decent enough motivations. Others, I'm not so sure, and I think that some of them actually are preying on the vulnerable. Now, in my own work, for my own important work, I could never, I've thought about, if I recover, could I do a course? Or might I do a course now based on what I know? I can't do it. I want my work to be available for free. And the whole idea of doing something and just not saying it as it is and holding things back, I'm not interested. And even with my book, right, which, technically it's a product. People pay for it. It's not the same as spending $500 on a course. And, royalties, someone buys a book, I get a cup of tea, basically. But basically, what I talk about on this channel, I talk about exactly the same stuff in the book. And so, I'm not holding stuff back here so people go and buy the book. I have talked about exactly the same research, exactly the same points here. And ultimately, I have not talked about everything from the book yet on this channel, but I have plans to do so. I have plans to share, ultimately, everything that's there here as well. And so that's why I use the word journalist, because I'm reporting. I want to talk about my experience, about the research. I want to do it all out there without anything being held back at all. So that's my aim and motivation, and I want this channel to grow. I know that I don't have the tips and tricks YouTubers. I know that the camera quality could be better. I do have a microphone, but it's at home, not with me here in Romania. So the sound quality isn't the best either. I've been learning about YouTube algorithms and thumbnails and all that kind of stuff and how to get that better. And yes, one day I hope I'll get a better camera. I'm not interested in gimmicks, basically. But I do want the channel to grow. And I know it will be slow and steady. It's not going to just take off. It'll be bit by bit. I don't think it'll ever be one of the main channels, like people who have 50,000 subscribers, but I hope that it can grow to 10 or 20,000 over the coming years. And I want it to be a place where people can come and get reasonable breakdowns of the research, reasonable discussions of all the issues in relation to ME-CFS. And I also want to be interviewing more patients and researchers as well. So I want it to be a place that can really help support people in that long, windy, rocky road towards hoped-for recovery, or at least a quality of life that you can be happy with. So to wrap up this video now, as I say, I'd rather not have ME-CFS, but I do. In life, when we are dealt certain hands, we have to try our best to play those hands in a way that meets the challenge as best as we can. And sometimes when I'm feeling down about having this illness, and frankly I'm fed up of the whole lot of it, I come across a story, a video of someone with severe ME, and it usually hits me so hard, I immediately regain the motivation to continue. We are all fighting for each other with this illness, and some people are not in a position to fight for themselves. And so I believe that we need to keep fighting in this collective effort to turn around this situation. I think that when I have those moments where the heart is laid bare, when something really deeply moves me, the same thoughts usually come to me, which is that the most important thing in life is to ease suffering in other people and to ease suffering in yourself. My own work, in its own ways, with its own limitations, is trying to do that. I'm trying to get better myself. I'm trying to share that journey with other people. I'm trying, and that's not just practical strategies, it's also knowing what you're facing. So I'm trying to turn around my own situation and put my learnings out there. So that basically is why I do the work that I do. And, I have no plans to stop doing this work anytime soon. I want to keep going, at least for another few years. If I recover, I think I would still do this kind of work. Maybe not at the same, rate. I think that I would still do it. But anyway, so those are my thoughts. That's what kind of helps me to get up in the morning and keep going. And I just wanted to share it with people. I've not really talked about that. I've not told people why I do what I do. Yeah, so that's basically it. Nothing else to say on it. But I'd be interested to hear from you in the comments. How do you find meaning in life with ME-CFS? How do you find the strength to keep going? And I think there can be many answers to that. But it's perhaps even beyond the hope to recover. I think how we find meaning in our circumstances and the fight to actually keep putting our best foot forward despite all our physical limitations that are imposed on us by the illness is the most important question that we actually have to ask ourselves as ME-CFS patients. Okay, so that's it for this video. I will see you in the next one when I'll probably be back with my usual kinds of videos talking about research or a treatment. This is just a short word to say that this video is sponsored by Normalite. Normalite is something that I have been using for the last 3 years, and it is hands down the most effective supplement that I have found to help me with my ME-CFS. It is a form of oral rehydration solution designed specifically for ME-CFS and POTS patients. One study showed that if you drink a litre of ORS, you can boost your blood volume as effectively as a saline IV. I am someone who still struggles with low blood volume, and Normalite for me is an indispensable way for me to feel a lot better every day and to be more functional and to have more of a life. So please check out the links down below in the description box to get your own packets of Normalite.